Billionaire CEO saw the waitress hiding her tips. What he did next left everyone speechless. It was a busy Friday night at a high-end restaurant in Manhattan, the kind of place where chandeliers sparkled and every customer spoke with quiet confidence, surrounded by luxury. Among them was a young waitress named Lena, moving gracefully between tables with a tired smile that hid her exhaustion. She had been working double shifts for weeks, trying to pay for her mother's hospital bills while keeping her head down. She never complained, not even when customers snapped at her or left without tipping. Watching from the corner table was Ethan Ward, a billionaire CEO known for his ruthless business tactics and cold demeanor. He had come for a quiet dinner but found himself strangely drawn to the waitress who seemed to carry the weight of the world with grace. As he prepared to leave, he caught sight of something unusual. Lena slipped a few dollar bills from her apron and hid them inside her shoe. Ethan frowned. Why would a waitress hide her tips? His curiosity grew stronger, so he decided to stay a little longer to see what was really going on. When the restaurant finally emptied, Ethan watched Lena head toward the back room. Quietly, he followed at a distance. Inside, she knelt beside a shelf, pulled out a small metal box, and counted the little money she had managed to save. Inside the box were medical bills and an old photograph of her and her mother smiling in better days. Lena whispered softly to herself, "Just 2 more weeks, Mom. Hang in there." Ethan's expression softened. For the first time in years, something pierced through his carefully built wall of indifference. He realized the girl wasn't hiding her tips for greed. She was protecting them from someone. The next morning, Ethan asked one of the other workers discreetly about Lena, and the truth shocked him. The restaurant manager had been stealing the staff's tips for months, threatening to fire anyone who spoke up. Lena had discovered it but chose to hide her small earnings rather than lose her job. That evening, Ethan returned to the restaurant, ordered his usual coffee, and left without a word. But on the counter, he placed a sealed envelope with Lena's name on it. When she opened it, she found a note that said, "Don't hide your tips anymore." Beneath it was a check for $50,000 signed by Ethan Ward himself. Her hands trembled as tears filled her eyes. Before she could understand what was happening, the manager appeared, furious, accusing her of theft. But just then, Ethan walked back inside, his voice calm but firm. "Actually," he said, "I gave it to her. And as of this morning, I own this restaurant." The entire room went silent. The manager turned pale, and within seconds, Ethan exposed his corruption and fired him on the spot. From that day, he raised all employee wages and made Lena the new supervisor. He later said to a reporter, "She reminded me what real strength looks like." For once, a billionaire used his power not to dominate, but to lift someone who truly deserved it. After the restaurant closed that night, the lights dimmed and the chatter faded until only the soft hum of the refrigerators filled the air. Ethan stayed behind, pretending to be finishing his drink, but his eyes quietly followed Lena. He watched her gather plates, wipe tables, and move with the same calm rhythm she had even when exhausted. When she thought everyone was gone, she slipped through the kitchen door and headed to the storage room. Ethan, driven by curiosity, walked closer, careful not to make a sound. Through the narrow gap of the half-open door, he saw her kneel on the cold floor and reach behind a stack of cleaning supplies. She pulled out a small metal box, old and dented, the kind that looked like it had been opened too many times with hope and disappointment. She unlocked it with a trembling hand, and inside were a few crumpled bills, some coins, medical receipts, and a faded photo of an older woman lying in a hospital bed. Lena touched the picture gently and whispered, "Just 2 more weeks, Mom. I promise." Her voice cracked with exhaustion, the kind that comes from long days, unpaid hours, and endless worry. Ethan felt something strange inside him, something he hadn't felt in years. Guilt. He suddenly saw how small her world was, how much effort it took her just to survive each day. He understood then that she wasn't hiding her tips out of greed. She was protecting them. As he stepped back into the shadows, Ethan recalled rumors he had overheard about corrupt restaurant managers who stole from their staff. It all began to make sense. The missing tips, the way Lena avoided eye contact when her manager passed by, the tired way she smiled at customers who left nothing. Ethan, a man who once thought money solved everything, now stood frozen, realizing how cruel the world could be for those who had none. He thought of his own empire, built on deals and profits, and for the first time, it felt meaningless compared to what he had just witnessed. A woman working herself to the bone to save her mother's life. The thought hit him like a punch. He turned away quietly, not wanting to be seen. On his way out, he stopped by the counter, pulled out his business card, and scribbled a message on it. "Tomorrow, don't hide your tips." He placed it under a cup where she would find it in the morning. Then he left the restaurant without looking back, his heart heavier than his wallet for the first time in years. As he stepped into the cold night air, the sound of the city faded behind him, replaced by the echo of a single thought. Maybe, just maybe, he had finally found a reason to change. The next evening, Lena walked into the restaurant with nervous steps. She had barely slept the night before, her mind racing with confusion about the strange note she had found. "Tomorrow, don't hide your tips." Those words had echoed in her head again and again. Who had written it, and why? When she arrived at her station, something unusual caught her eye. Resting on the counter was another note, this time placed neatly beside a sealed envelope with her name written in elegant handwriting. Her hands shook slightly as she picked it up. Inside was a check, $50,000. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Her eyes darted to the bottom of the page where the signature read, Ethan Ward. She had seen that name before. He was the billionaire who had dined quietly at table 7 2 nights ago. Her mind went blank. Why would a man like him leave her something like this? Was it a mistake? Just then, her manager, Mr. Dalton, walked in. His sharp eyes immediately caught sight of the check in her hand. "What's that?" he snapped, his tone thick with suspicion. Before Lena could even explain, he snatched it from her fingers. When he saw the amount, his face twisted with rage. "You little thief," he shouted. "You think you can steal from our customers now?" The entire staff froze where they stood. Lena stammered, her voice breaking. "No, sir, I didn't. Someone left it for me, I swear." But Dalton didn't care. He grabbed her arm and barked, "You're done here. I'll call the police." Before he could take another step, the restaurant doors swung open and Ethan Ward walked in. The room fell silent instantly. The manager's expression shifted from anger to confusion. Ethan's calm, commanding voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Actually," he said evenly, "I gave it to her." The color drained from the manager's face. Ethan stepped forward, his sharp suit catching the light. "And while we're at it," he continued, "you might want to be careful how you speak to my new employee." He paused for a beat before adding, "As of this morning, I own this restaurant." A stunned silence filled the air. Dalton's mouth opened and closed in disbelief. "You what?" he muttered. Ethan handed him a folder. "These are the records I reviewed before buying this place. Imagine my surprise when I found out you've been stealing the staff's tips and falsifying payroll reports." The manager's face went pale as the employees began whispering. Ethan looked directly at Lena. "You were the only one who didn't give up, even when he tried to take everything from you." Then he turned back to Dalton, his voice turning icy. "Pack your things. You're fired." As the disgraced manager stormed out, Lena stood frozen, tears filling her eyes. For the first time in years, someone had stood up for her. Ethan placed a gentle hand on her shoulder and said quietly, "No one who works this hard should ever have to hide their honesty." In the weeks that followed, the restaurant began to change in ways no one could have imagined. Ethan Ward wasn't the kind of man who made small gestures. When he decided to fix something, he rebuilt it from the ground up. The first thing he did was raise the salaries of every employee, ensuring they earned enough to live with dignity. He introduced a profit-sharing system so that everyone, from the cooks to the dishwashers, would have a real stake in the restaurant's success. The workers who once dreaded coming to their shifts now arrived with smiles. For the first time, the sound of laughter filled the kitchen instead of quiet resentment. Lena, who had been too afraid to speak up before, found herself promoted to floor supervisor. She worked beside Ethan every day, learning how to manage, how to lead, and how to believe in herself again. She used her first paycheck to pay off her mother's medical bills. something she had dreamed of for years but never thought possible. Ethan visited the restaurant often, not as a boss sitting in the back office, but as someone who rolled up his sleeves and listened. He spoke with every employee, asking about their lives, their families, and what they needed to feel valued. The billionaire who once measured success in numbers now found himself counting smiles instead. He even created a fund under the Ward Foundation to help struggling workers across the city, naming it the Lena Grant, to honor the young woman who had unknowingly changed his heart. When the local news heard about the transformation, they came to cover the story. Cameras flashed as reporters asked why a billionaire would spend millions fixing one small restaurant. Ethan's reply was simple and sincere. Because she reminded me what real work looks like. Those words spread like wildfire across the internet, and within days, people everywhere were sharing Lena's story. A story of honesty, resilience, and hope. Months later, the restaurant became one of the most successful in Manhattan, not because of luxury or status, but because it had soul. Customers returned not just for the food, but for the warmth that greeted them at the door. On the restaurant's reopening night, Ethan stood beside Lena as they welcomed guests together. The same girl who once hid her tips in fear now stood tall in a tailored suit, confident and proud. She thanked him quietly, her voice trembling. "You didn't just save my job, you gave me back my life." Ethan smiled, replying softly, "No, Lena, you reminded me how to live mine." As the lights glowed and laughter filled the room, Ethan realized that true wealth wasn't measured in money, but in the lives you lived along the way. And for the first time in years, he felt richer than ever before.